There's Paul McStay. Paul McStay with the opening goal. 21 minutes into the second half. The Celtic end goes wild.
And they gave us James McRory and Paul McStay. They gave us Johnston, Tully, Murdoch, Gold and Hay. And most of the football greats have passed through Parkhead's gates. But to play football the Glasgow Celtic way. And they played football the Glasgow Celtic way.
Hello and welcome to the Celtic Ray podcast. My name is Stephen Ray. I am your host, and this week I'm joined by Kevin McColgan. How you doing, Kevin?
Not too bad. It's McColgan just for anybody else.
just McColgan. Is that what people just call you?
So just Kev will do.
Kev. Well, Kev, this is your debut on podcasting, as far as I'm aware. Is that right?
Pretty much, yeah.
So hopefully you're good.
I hopefully I have as good a debut as some players down the history. You never know, Mark.
Aye. So what's your Twitter handle for people that maybe want to give you a wee follow?
Is appropriately WeKev or at WeKev 1888.
Cool. So if you want to give Kev a call, you don't want to give him a call, give him a wee tweet, and by all means, crack on there. Right, so we may as well dive right into it. So number one on my list of subjects is the Boli. I was going to introduce him another way, but he doesn't deserve his full name, to be honest.
He really does not. I mean, where do you start with that? I mean, it's absolutely shocking what he done, and the actions are totally and utterly thoughtless of one individual.
Yeah, I think I seen it coming out on, I think it was Monday night. I seen the Sun being retweeted onto my timeline, and I seen it, and I thought, oh man, this isn't going to be good.
And you knew as soon as you saw ball and goal, you just think, well, I mean, he's his poor performances anyway. So what else could it be?
Oh, I'm glad I didn't dive into the Aberdeen points deduction argument because I wouldn't have had a leg to stand on. I didn't agree. I didn't think Aberdeen deserved a points deduction, but I didn't think the game should have been postponed. I think they should have been playing, and St Johnstone should have had the benefit of Aberdeen being down to, losing 8 of their best players. But,
at least Aberdeen, though, were fair enough to admit it and say, well, we're out, to a certain degree, whereas Bolingoli just kept his mouth shut when he shouldn't have, and that's just, why he done that, I do not know. For one day, it's just...
Well, I was going to say, apparently this isn't the first time he's fucked up. Apparently he was late, or he was in Paris, or he turned up late for Paris or something. There was something along the lines where...
He got a commercial flight or something himself, or something along those lines, wasn't it? It was very... It's all been a bit strange.
Aye.
I think it's the best way to put it. I would say, the thing that gets me though with it is the Daily Record have this photo on Tuesday when it's all kind of blown over. How long have they held on to that photo for?
No, I've thought about that myself, and I've tried to play devil's advocate and try and sort of think of a reason why. And I think they maybe thought that Boli had told the club, and the minute he played and was on the bench, that was them basically saying, well, obviously nobody knows. But the way Lennon, the way he was wording it, it almost came across as if because he mentioned that he knew sort of lunchtime on the Monday. So that tells me that a journalist has contacted him to say, we've got proof that your player's been on the plane. We're going to run with this story. And he's probably said, well, going to let me confirm it first, and then obviously you're going to do what you're going to do. And I think that's what the kind of route is went down. But to actually not tell anybody and think he'd get away with it, he could have went anywhere in Europe, and he'd have been fine.
But the thing is, I mean, I don't get it for one day. I don't see what, because obviously we've not heard anything whereby it might have been a club that he was maybe trying to negotiate a move or whatever. But even if it was, as Lennon says, that club's got to come forward purely for the purpose of tracing contact, and to make sure everybody that might have came into contact with him, because I imagine he must have came into contact with someone, is safe and the knowledge that he's not quarantined.
I know. Maybe he's calling them out so he can say, "Going to take him off my hands," so to speak.
I seen Neil Warnock today on Talksport, that lovely radio station.
Yeah.
Saying, he tried to get him on loan, and he just as well he didn't now.
Aye.
I don't.
Well, that kind of leads me on to a question that came in, actually. And I'm going to have Twitter questions later, but this one, because we're on the subject of Boli, I'm just going to dig it out here. So this came in from John Paul Wilson, who's actually one of my neighbours, believe it or not. And now it's no favouritism, but he just said here, he's wrote, playing devil's advocate here, would Lennon and fans' reaction have been different if it was French Eddie?
Well, funny enough, that's one of my notes down here. What would have the reaction been had? Let's face it, one of the best players that we've seen in a while.
Yeah.
Like that. It would have been interesting to see the reaction. I think it would have been handled a bit differently. If I'm being brutally honest with myself, I think it would be. I
definitely think so. I think the fans would have accepted, a 5 or an 8 game ban or whatever by the club, basically as a real harsh punishment, because you can only fine them up to 2 weeks' wages, as far as I'm aware. But then by, obviously they would have been able to justify it because they brought in a new player. But Eddie people have used that argument. What if it was French Eddie, or what if it was, Callum McGregor? But the fact is they seem to be model professionals. The fact that Edward stayed here, during the lockdown and didn't go home to France, he decided to stay in Scotland, and basically, he must. Well, he's home here, so he must like it here. So
I think he is really enjoying it. I think this puts any rumours that he might have left this season. Okay, the transfer window's still up until October, but I think the way he speaks and the way he kind of reacts and the way he plays in the pitch, it's not as if you see someone who just does not want to be here. It reminded me of Hooper, was sometimes when he was maybe on off the off, he just looked as if he didn't want to try. But Eddie seems to be, as you say, model professional, wants to, do his best for what he believes is, and if he's taken into account the magical number, shall we say. I'm very much of the opinion that he will stay, but had it been Eddie, I think it would have been different.
Aye, I think the attitude is always going to be different with a fan's favourite versus a player who's, not seen as. Now, I wasn't against Bolingoli playing, week in, week out. I'm still kind of on the fence regards to Taylor, although he had a great game against Hamilton, but that's, you've got to put it in perspective, it's Hamilton.
Yeah.
But I've always felt that Boli might have been a better player within a 3-5-2, and I wasn't against, because I think he is good going forward, although defensively he does get caught out, but he's quick, and he gets into good forward positions. So I wasn't totally against, him being part of the team this year, but I wasn't against the selling. I think what's highlighted, I think what the realisation is we bought this guy as Kieran Tierney's replacement.
Yeah, and to be at the level of Kieran Tierney, he would have had to have been some player. And with all the greatest respect to Bolingoli, there is a player in there, but he's never going to be near the levels of, because Tierney's totally different. He was a fan's favourite, fan that grew up, got lucky, really interacted with the fans.
Model professional.
Yeah, model professional as well. And it is good to see Mr. Tierney doing well down in Arsenal.
Yeah.
But you're never going to get the same. This is the same. We should never ever compare players to players. It should just be, we sell a player, thanks for the memories, goodbye, let's get the next one and then rebuild. And that's all you can do at Celtic. You can't perform miracles. You have to go on sometimes.
Yeah, I'm just curious that when we went to look at Bolingoli, did we look at him as the player? Did we ask the question about his personality? Does he have, history of, defying managers or going against, instructions and stuff like that? So I think, it's highlighted maybe a part of the scouting, i.e. the players' sort of mentality and professionalism going forward. I think he's done, if I'm honest. If he's already had a warning before, I think I'm not in the camp of just sack him. I don't, because at the end of the day, I mean, when I was 23, 24, I made stupid mistakes and done things that I shouldn't have been doing, regardless of how much money I was earning or not earning at the time, probably. But I don't want to throw him under the bus, but I think his time at Celtic's done. So I think the best thing for him and for Celtic is to possibly sell him if possible, but maybe put him out on loan with the view of him being sold, January or. But he needs to be away for the club, as far as I'm concerned, because I think Lennon's done with him.
Well, I think you could
don't do that to Lennon and come back for it.
You could tell. Sorry to interrupt there, Stephen. You could tell by his reaction to the press. It was a very, very disappointed individual. But Lennon was just speaking with how we were all feeling that Monday night into Tuesday morning, how detrimental this can be to what is one of the most important scenes in the history of the club, and most modern history of the club.
Yeah, well, that kind of brings me on to the next point of,
for him to act like that is shocking, and for me, he should never ever play for the club again.
No, I don't think he will play for the club again, and obviously the result in his actions has led to Celtic having 2 games, pretty important games, postponed. Now we don't know when these games are going to be played. Obviously, we're not going to have the opportunity to bounce straight back for a poor performance on Sunday against. Obviously, we would have been playing St Mirren last night in a game we would have been expected to win, and obviously we've got Aberdeen. We would have had Aberdeen on Saturday, which sort of Lennon would have probably tried to have his team that he was going to have for the Champions League playing. So,
the thing is as well, like, what possesses him to do that in this current climate as well? He's not above the law. He is just a model. He should be a model professional at the end of the day. He's not a Superman. He's the same as anybody else. They have to be cautious in these things.
I just think for every top sort of professional, like somebody like Callum McGregor or Scott Brown. Scott Brown's made mistakes, but never to this probably. But for every guy like that who does everything right on and off the field, you're always going to have these kind of rogues. I'll tell you one person who's absolutely delighted, and that's Lee Griffiths.
Oh, the spotlight's well and truly off him. I bet he's going, thanks, Boli. It's because where do you start with him as well? You could be that. Well, obviously we'll come on to that later, but it could be that with this signing of a Yeti, or a Yeti as he's wanting to be known as, it's got to be that I'm afraid the thumbs times is up.
Possibly. But we'll get to that when we cover sort of transfers and stuff. So the postponed games has basically led us to being, points behind Rangers already. So I think at this moment in time we are 5 points behind them, and we could be up to 11 points behind by the time we play our next league game. Now,
it's quite galling, that thought.
It's kind of putting the pressure on right away, but the pressure's obviously on Rangers as well, because their fans are expecting them to be 11 points clear by the time we kick a ball. So we'll see how they react to that.
To be honest though, I mean, obviously we don't want to speak too much about our lovely friends across the city, but if you're Steven Gerrard in that dressing room, you're not needing to do much for team talk, are you? Because the chance to go 11 points clear in this season of all seasons, that's got to be some motivation for them, and unfortunately it looks as if the way that they took apart St Johnstone last night, or St Mirren on Sunday, it doesn't look as if they really are struggling.
Well, they're not conceding goals for a start, and they look pretty strong, and they look as if they've got a wee bit more depth in their squad. So obviously the baton's been passed to Rangers to sort of put this mountain of points up ahead of Celtic, but these games have still to be played, so Celtic have got it in them to claw that back. I could see potentially, as it stands right now and based on what's happened, I could see the next opportunity for Celtic to go top of the league could be the game we play Rangers on the 17th of October. It could be that long before we get back to the top of the league based on the actions of Boli. So well, I think that's enough of Boli. We'll move on to the game.
He doesn't more than about 20 minutes of time. So,
well, it was about 13 and a half, so that's why he's a lucky 13 as well. Sunday, your thoughts on Sunday?
Very poor. Is a couple of words I've used to describe it. I'm never ever been a fan of plastic pitches. in my opinion, they should be banned from the top flight.
Especially plastic pitches that have been reduced in size to accommodate the team that they're playing against. I don't know if you noticed that, the lines.
And that's one thing I was coming on to. I mean, I just think that I don't think that's correct to do that all the time just for when they feel like to do it. Obviously, they've done it for this season. Obviously, they can't have just switched it from one game to the next. But I just don't think that's a right thing to do. I think it should be that, well, this is what you've got, so please stick with it. But I suppose as long as they're staying within the parameters of a pitch size and the league regulations, and what can they do? But I've never been a fan of them, and they should be banned, in my opinion, in the top flight, because they do not make for a good game of football. Yeah,
I've yet to see very many good games on a pitch like that. Although I think that the 2 each against Livingston last season was a decent game. Although, but it's an absolute definite advantage, because you only have to look at the results of teams that play home versus what the amount of points they pick up away, and it's quite considerable. I just think, not to water the pitch, it's obviously playing into them, but we've got to be good enough to beat teams like Kilmarnock, so
exactly. We must have one. Well, we obviously do have the best squad in Scotland, but I mean, some of those players that played in that team for Celtic, they've been playing at Kilmarnock for years, and it's Brown and McGregor and Christie maybe has only came in at a couple of seasons, but they seemed as if frightened to make a tackle, bounced off the ball very easily, not want to play a pass, because they know as soon as they play a pass, it's either not going to go straight across the ground because it's going to bobble, and if they play a high ball, when it bounces, it's not going to bounce the way they want it.
Well, you speak of tackles there, and the free kick that led to the goal, for me, was a sending off. The guy gets away, Edward gets away for the guy. Exactly. And there's absolutely no attempt for the ball. It's an absolute hatchet job to bring him down. And I just think tackles like that it's a straight red for me.
It's the same with I think there was a tackle by, was it Power or on Mo? And I think that on around about the 35th minute of the game. And I was thinking that was more of a red card than what the challenge on Eddie was by Gary Dicker, I think.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was more of a red card, but I would be inclined to agree with you that probably it should have been a red card, but I mean it was so early on in the game, and I think there would have been a lot of tongues wagging, shall we say, if a certain referee gave a red card again for Celtic.
I just think it's the ball. The ball's way away from him. He's no chance of getting the ball. It's a clear, siving down job. So but it's a great free kick it's quite a clever free kick actually by Christie.
It's a decent strike, but the keeper's caught out though, I would have to say.
I noticed he never put a wall up, so and so did Christie.
But I mean, it's almost like that free kick that was in the playoff final, albeit it's a bit more of a tighter angle, where your man from the film, he just hit it, and he did take the keeper right out of the play, but it was a decent strike. You thought from there, you think, right, well, we didn't exactly start great, but let's build from here.
Yeah, it was a bit of a slow start, and it kind of had that feel about it that it was going to be tight, and it was only maybe going to be a goal in it, to be honest. So to get a goal, I thought, well, we hopefully we'll be able to build on that, but it just never materialised. I just think, if you go through the lineup, obviously Barkas made his debut. I don't think he can be attributed any blame to any point of the game. I thought he had a pretty solid first game. He'd done what he'd done well, but he didn't have much to do, to be fair.
He caught every ball with these, which I think can't be said. The same can't be said for Scott Bain. Certainly with some of the saves that he made on the previous weekend at Hamilton, against Hamilton, I should say. There was one shot that came in the first half, and you're thinking, as a keeper, you've got to save that. And he started to just smash it with his fist over the bar, and I'm thinking
knuckleball or something.
Well, maybe
that was the Doris De Vries one, wasn't it, when he tried to knuckleball against Zenit and it went straight in.
Oh God, that name sends shivers down my spine. How he was ever a keeper, I do not know.
So obviously the fullbacks were Frimpong and Taylor, centre halves as usual, Julian Ayer, midfield again, no Encham.
I was surprised because I was listening to your podcast last week, and I was very interested to hear your opinion of Brown, and I've got to say I'm starting to see it more now with what you said.
I don't. Do you know what? I don't want to come on here every week and bash Scott Brown, because it's no. At the end of the day, it's not his fault. He's at a point in his career where he's not going to be able to do what he used to be able to do. It's, and I've listened to some other podcasts, and I've listened to other opinions, and I hear people talk about these intangibles that you don't see, in regards to how he motivates or how he makes others round about him better. But I'm not seeing it. And I think, if anything, the players round about are having to work harder, because he's not winning as many 50-50s. He's not winning as many interceptions as he once was. And the stats are all there. I know if you're not into your XG stats and all that sort of stuff, then that's no for you. But the fact of the matter is all the top clubs that are doing well use these stats. Atalanta are one of the clubs that are massive into their stats. A small club with a fraction of the budget, PSG, and they should have knocked them out last night. So
absolutely gutted for absolutely gutted. But that's more to do with my dislike of Neymar, who's just one of the most arrogant people I've ever met, ever saw. Sorry, because I don't mind PSG because I'm a fan of Mbappe, but it's just it was spoiled for me. And then they had a chance late at the end, but we were digressing there slightly. I mean, going back to Brown. You were talking about stats there. I mean, what I done was, because I'm one of those individuals that love stats and will concentrate on stats to a certain degree. His first pass that he gave away was within 1 minute 29 seconds. He does it for a further 5 times within the next 15 minutes. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to define his season, but it certainly backs up your opinion of him. And he is getting to that age where he is getting a bit slower. It's only natural to the human body. Not every football player at that age is Cristiano Ronaldo, who just seems to be going back with years instead of going forward with years. What is wrong with giving N'Sham a start and just saying to Brown, and Brown, I think, will know himself that he is getting to that age. He must know within his body that he might not be able to do a 60-game season.
I think there was a point in the game where I actually seen him go for he closed somebody down, and I think he missed it, and he actually shook his head, and it was almost as if he was annoyed with himself. He knows what he needs to do. He knows what he was capable of, but maybe his body's just it only has to be half a second slower, and that's that's 2-3 yards, and in football terms. So, but he was by far the only one that had a poor game on the day. I don't think, aside from the goal, I think Christie was really poor in possession. I think Julien, the boy, got inside his head in the first half. Although I did think he had it under control in the second, and there wasn't any problems in the second half. But by that time, we're chasing the win, and the pressure's on.
Yeah, I must admit, with Julien, obviously, I was driving back during when the game was on, but I was listening to it, and then I rewatched the game when I came home. But the way that a certain Mr. Keevans was slating Julien, you thought he had actually one of the poorest games. But I tell you, I've seen worse games against Lyndon Dykes.
Yeah,
to be honest. And as you say, in the second half, you would never have thought that there was a problem because he had it under control. But this is my problem with Julien. A good player, £7 million. There must be Lyndon Dykes type players or Kabamba type players that he must have came up against in France. And why can he not just work on that? He must have known that was a bad part of his game, that if somebody gets in his head, or whatever, I don't see why it's such a big problem, because Lyndon Dykes and Kabamba, okay, they're good for Kilmarnock and Livingston respectfully, but they shouldn't be causing us problems.
No, but I remember back when I'll be covering the 90s at some point on a feature show soon, and there's a player that Celtic used to always have a torrid time against, regardless of who was at centre half, and it was a guy called Dougie Arnott from Motherwell, a wee small nippy, sturdy guy who just always seemed to score against Celtic, especially at Fir Park. So I just think sometimes players just have a type of player that they just do not come up against well. So I think, obviously, first of all, the chance that went to the penalty, the ball looked as if it had been out. Julien was waving, his arms sort of thing. I think Frimpong as well he switched off, claiming, and there's that old saying, point to the whistle. But I think as the ball sort of came down to the byline, I think Julian had him under control. But then Scott Brown comes on at the rear. Julian sort of takes a step back, but he takes a step back away from the line as opposed to being on the line. And Brown just doesn't really challenge, and then the guy turns, and next thing Julian's made an arse and he's pulled him down.
That's when my kind of notes it, because I watched. Like the sad person I am. I must have rewound it 3 or 4 times just to have a good look at it. And Brown tries this tackle, and it's kind of back to what you were saying about how it doesn't really, maybe that the brains know that half second maybe isn't working as better as it was or as good as it was maybe a couple of seasons ago. It does put Julian off, I think, and Julian thinks, oh well, that's it. It's dealt with, but then the way he brought him down, it's a definite penalty.
Aye,
there's no complaints.
No.
Great tackle in rugby. You know what I mean?
Ultimately the blame lies with Julian because he brings the guy down. He should have been in a better position. If he's standing, even half a yard off the byline, then the guy's not getting round him. But he's stood about a metre back, and his leg gave him that big space to basically turn into, and that's what's led to the penalty.
It was quite a tight bit of the park. He did turn him round, and that is pretty impressive that he was able to do that. But at the same time, though, as you say, he should be in front of him and say, kind of backing off him, because I don't think there was really much. I don't think it would have led to him trying the Kabamba doing that had Brown interfered. If Brown hadn't interfered, I think it would have been totally different. That's just my opinion. But
I think so, but it's if Manty had balls and all that, so it's hard to say for sure. But just to answer your point on Hugh Keevins just had his grievance. I don't know if grievance is the right word, but he's had it in for Julian since the day that the Cluj game where Lennon didn't pick him. Picked Julian because he basically said he wasn't ready, and he was giving it the whole, this £7 million guy's come in and he's not ready and he's not fit, and ever since then he's one of these guys. He makes an opinion and he refuses to change it. Now I tried to have a think back at all the games where Julian was supposedly bullied and had really poor games, and the only ones that I can think of was the first half against Kilmarnock at the weekend. I thought he was a wee bit poor in the Hamilton game where he lost quite a few headers coming into the box, but it was nothing like drastic. And definitely the 2 games against Livingston, although the second game against Livingston, I think he was a bit better than he was the first time. But other than that, I think Julian in the cup final against Lazio, in Europe mainly, I think he's been absolutely outstandanding, and I just don't see that what other people are seeing.
Yeah. I like Julian. He's certainly, out of him and Ayer, I still think I would pick Ayer because I think he just shows a wee bit more passion, and I think that's important for me. I really like a defender that shows a bit of passion. I think just Ayer's just got that wee bit more edge on him. Albeit that Ayer does go a gallop sometimes and doesn't really take the ball with him. But as you say,
we're nearly half an hour in, and I'm going to disagree with you for the first time. I would, if somebody was to say you're going to sell one and keep the other, I would sell Ayer. I think Julian is a better defender. I think he's better in the air. I think he's more of a goal threat. Ayer's the only defender I know that goes from 6'8" to 5'5" at corner kicks. It's. I find
that, well, maybe it's just more I'm just being too emphasising maybe much more on what he shows in passion. Maybe that's that shouldn't be taken into consideration.
You agree with me? You can disagree all you like.
No, I know, but it's just there's just something about Julian. I think Julian's got one of the weirdest passing styles I've ever seen as well. If when he gets the ball, he hits it with his left foot open. He has to kind of swing his full body to it. I don't know if you know what I mean.
I've never noticed it, but I'm going to watch for it now.
It's the weirdest style. You're just like kind of, instead of just like passing it gently, it's just like this full body movement. I just find that if he could just slow that down a bit, and there would be, as you say, he would be as a good player. But there's just be things that I think, I don't think Ayer's as bad as that with certainly the passing part of it.
Yeah. Oh, Ayer likes to slide tackle more than most, so that's something he needs to cut. He loves a slide tackle.
He's sevens on a Monday. He loves a slide tackle. You know?
What was I going to say? So obviously we move into the second half. We're just not creating any chances. Neither's Kilmarnock, and then obviously Scott Brown gets substituted. So I mean, it was the right substitution, but it was about 25 minutes later than it should have been.
And this gets back to Lennon with substitutions. He liked to take his time with them, and I think with this 5 substitutes, you're going to see a lot of late substitutions happening. And
Lennon strikes me as I think he's got a bit of Martin O'Neill in him, where it's all very tried and trusted type players, and I think it's something he needs to move away from, because he'll play a half fit Brown or a half fit Forrest over a fully fit someone else. And he done that in the Copenhagen game, like I spoke about last week, where he dropped in Cham for Brown, who he was clearly not fit, and Brown get the runaround off the guy Zika, who and they proved against Man United during the week they were a pretty good side, pretty handy side. You know, it could keep the ball.
They were very unlucky not to knock Man United. Very unlucky.
So I think that's something that Lennon, he needs to pick his best fit available 11. You know. But for me, moving forward, personally, I would prefer Brown to be the backup for McGregor. Now, Brown is the kind of guy where, you know, we've got the lead, we're away from home, you know, there's 20 minutes to go, it's a tight game, then maybe you bring him on just for that extra defensive kind of cover. I just don't see, I just don't have Brown as a starter on my side anymore. It's that's just how I feel, and I know it's harsh, and people talk about, but he can still be a great captain. He just doesn't have to start every game
in the dressing room.
You know, Tom Boyd and Paul Lambert didn't, you know, start every game in the last sort of season or two that they were with the club. So, and they were really good captains of the club. So it's my opinion on that one.
So. I mean, you bring a good point there, because, you know, I think it was Rodgers last season with us. I think, or it might have been the season before, and Brown got dropped, and I tell you, the intensity just rose. I think because then, you know, when he was out,
he was injured during that sort of period.
He was injured. He was injured, and then it just seemed to be that we're playing a lot better football.
The midfield was McGregor, Rogic, and Christie, so there just seemed to be more legs, and Rogic was pretty dangerous up front, or just behind the main striker. So
there was no sideways pass, which I think Brown's very, very guilty of. You know, there's never really a forward pass in him now.
Well, I don't think he made that many passes in the game.
No, he certainly didn't make that many passes in that game, though. But certainly he's very much, you know, sideways passer. I mean, you very rarely see him getting forward too much.
All I'm going to say, if it wasn't for Bolingoli, there wouldn't have been much to talk about. And obviously today we got something else to talk about. So we'll move on to sort of transfer stuff, and obviously we've signed Albion Ajeti, so I've wrote down some notes based on his. If nobody really knows about him, or and they've not bothered their arse to look up Wikipedia or whatever. He started off his career in Basel, FC Basel's youth team, and then he moved in 2015 to FC Augsburg from Germany for 900,000. Then he got put on loan to St Gallen, which is the team that Rangers have just signed somebody from, I think. He went to St Gallen on loan, and then eventually for 900,000, and then back to FC Basel for 1.25 million in 2017, and then on after finishing Swiss top scorer 2017-18, and he scored 37 goals and 75 appearances for Basel. He moved to West Ham for 7.8 million, which is not to be sniffed at. So he's got 10 caps for Switzerland and 1 goal. Which is the game that won them I think they won 6-0 against Iceland to win their group on the Nations League to go to the finals.
I think Seferovic had a great game for them that night as well, didn't they?
So before I get your thoughts, I had seen the Twitter account of West Ham United, so I was interested to see the reaction to that, so I had a wee peek, and I would say the majority of the West Ham fans were pretty annoyed of the sale, not only that they sold him for less than they bought him, but two, they never felt he got a chance. Pretty much every one of them said, the guy never get a chance. He's going to tear it up in Scotland. You know.
Yeah.
There was a few Nan comments in there about Farmers League and all that shit, but.
But those people don't understand football, and those people think Harry Maguire's worth £80 million. So what do they know?
So your thoughts on it?
Well, very happy with the signing. Looking at the video that the Twitter account Football Swiss EN put on, which happens to be one of my best friends, Craig King. So if you're looking to see that Twitter account, which is a very interesting account about Swiss football, then give him a follow. But you'll also see 3 videos of all of his goals since he came here.
I seen a comment today saying that based on what they'd watched, he looked like a kind of Gary Hooper style striker.
Very, very much, yeah. He doesn't really. He doesn't. It's not like an Edward. Where Edward will peel off and come in from the left or come in from the right. He's very much. He will play on the last defender, and not exactly silky, but certainly will just try his utmost to get that ball in the net. From certainly from what I could see. Very happy with the signing. I think him and Edward could be a very interesting partnership because Edward will do most of the running, which I think Edward likes to do. Doesn't like to always be that person up front, totally on his own. And then you've got a Jetty who will be more than happy, which seems to be the kind of Hooper player you're saying, to put the ball in the back of the net. And from what I can see, very happy, but very, very, very surprised that it went from a loan move to a permanent signing.
I think the guy was pissed off at West Ham, and I think he kind of said that in his interview the day that he felt that he didn't get a chance and he should have been playing more. But so to me that makes it sound like he wanted to go to a club who really wanted him, and he was getting guarantees that he was going to be a starter. So I don't know if he. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago, it came out that he was wanting some time to think about it, and obviously you've seen the comments on Twitter, fuck him and move on to somebody else kind of thing, But I kind of stayed away from that kind of chat. I just thought, well, the guy's, he's no from Scotland, he's no a Celtic fan. He's obviously made a move that's no worked out for him, and he's just wanting to make sure that his next move is a right move, because he's only 23. So,
and he's committed for 4 years. So I mean, let's hope we get a good few goals out of him. And I think that was one of my notes. But obviously, before it kind of came out that maybe West Ham were kind of holding it back or kind of holding up the deal. It would appear that I think it was one of the Sky reporters. I can't remember his name now, but he's kind of been always on top of the Yeti story. He was saying how Lennon had intervened, and I think it's good that Lennon sort of has that persuasive power. Whether or not this came into play, it's good to have that kind of manager that really sells the club for what we want it to be. To get players here. Because I think there's always the stories of whereby Tommy Burns was a great seller of the club. Obviously, Tommy Burns missed a Celtic, but I think it's good to see Lennon doing that. And I think there's occasions where I think he convinced Joe Ledley to come, and I think there was maybe other deals for Joe Ledley at the time when he first came, when Lennon was the first manager. And I think it's very good to have a manager that understands the club that much and will go to lengths to try and get a player and show them what it could be. And as you say, I think it's got to be that he will be ahead of Klimala and Griffiths and will be starting, given the money was paid, is possibly put that into a permanent deal, which is refreshing to see, because I don't know about yourself, but I'm sick of loan deals. I'm absolutely sick of loan deals.
I mean, loan deals I think work. For me, loan deals should always be the player who cost an absolute fortune that we could never sign because we could never afford them, but there's an opportunity to get him for a year for him to try and maybe rebuild his reputation or whatever, or come and make a point, because we had that with like Craig Bellamy in the past, that we were never going to buy him, but he fell out with Souness and he needed somewhere to sort of prove a point, and we've had, so we've had that in the past. I think in regards to what you're saying about Lennon stepping in, it kind of reminds me a wee bit of the John McGinn thing in regards to, from McGinn's point of view. He said recently that when he spoke to Brendan Rodgers, Brendan said that he'll get games, but he says when he spoke to Steve Bruce said you'll play every week.
Aye.
And that's what convinced him to go, plus probably double the money, right enough. But
I know.
because Aston Villa were paying something like 200% of their turnover on wages just to get promoted, so they were obviously throwing money at it.
What they were throwing money at. But
Yeah,
I think that whole McGinn saga, you'll never really hear the full story of that, because we weren't totally fault free in that either.
no, of course.
We really
Aye,
tiptoed
that was,
into that.
aye, it was
really
basically the Hibs guy, what's his name, Petrie, and Lowell were basically having a cock fucking showing competition, and it was whoever was going to budge first. So
who's the biggest car?
Aye. So other people we've been linked with, so obviously Shane Duffy, big centre back. Apparently he's a big no nonsense, get it up him type centre half who. I seen a tweet today saying apparently he came for Shane Duffy for about 5 or 6 years ago, saying up the ra. So,
well, I know he'll get the boys fired up for a Celtic Rangers game anyway, so we'll get no problems there. Just maybe don't take him to St Vincent's before the game anyway.
He sounds like a defender that we need. I don't know if we can afford them because apparently they're looking for quite big money, and he's 8 million. Apparently, we're about 8 million, and he's 28 years old, and I don't see us ever paying, more than 5 for somebody over the age of 25, to be honest. So
I think the best we can hope for is a loan deal there, as you say. So back to the great loan deals, but it could be that. I mean, I think there's a video going about whereby he was certainly enjoying himself in a Celtic themed pub.
Yeah,
and I think that can also play a big part in a player's move. Certainly, well, he's 28. Did you say? What was it?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean 28. He's been in the Premier League. He's seen what the apparently the best league in the world's got to offer. I mean, if you're a fan, I think you can't turn down the chance. And okay, he might be on a lot of money, but I'm sure I heard today that a Yeti's took a wage cut to come here.
Yes,
he's not a fan, so it could just be another case of, well, maybe Lennon might just have a word in his ear, and it could be that we might get a very wide term to be a no-nonsense defender, which is exactly as you say, what we need. Someone who's just going to just put themselves about and maybe carry a few of them forward.
Yeah.
But no, I'd be very happy with that signing if he came in. And I think it's good to have people that play for the cause, certainly in seasons like this, to get the players just up to speed. Not that I'm sure Brown and McGregor would be certainly ramming it into them, but it's always just good to hear it from different people and, get the boys really integrated. If
it's a loan deal, then I don't really think the wages would come in it, because I think Celtic would contribute quite a bit towards that. Yeah. So the question goes to the player: do you want to be fighting relegation, or do you want to be going for 10 in a row for one season? That's what's got to be put on the table for him. So hopefully if something happens there. Next one today, I seen we were re-linked with Ollie Burke.
I nearly laughed off my seat when I saw that one. It's just I'm not a fan.
I'm not against it, if I'm honest. I think there is a footballer in there. I definitely think our wingers need a bit of competition. I
think maybe the problem was that Mr. Rodgers was playing as almost like a striker, and that's not what he is. I think, as you say, he's more of a kind of a false nine. I think we call it, just coming in off the wings, maybe. Incredible speed on him, absolutely incredible speed. But it seems to be when he gets a ball at his feet, it just all goes to a bit to pot. But I certainly wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't.
You don't need to agree with me if you think he's shite. Just say it.
I wouldn't say no, but I'm not. I would rather be, if it was between Duffy and Buck, I would get Duffy in. Definitely. I'm just not a bigger fan of him. From what I saw, I thought that was a very good athlete, but not a very good footballer.
That's one thing he's an athlete. And I vaguely remember he actually had a decent game against Valencia away, because they couldn't cope with his pace. To be honest. So he has got attributes. He's an athlete. He's fast. I don't think he's a great passer or finisher, but James Forrest didn't become the player he was at 23, 24. He's a lot more mature, and he's improved his game tenfold in the last 2 or 3 years. So these guys can be improved under the right conditions, I suppose. He probably is just one of these players that needs a home and somebody to put an arm around him, really.
He's never really stuck it down anywhere, isn't he? I mean, he went from, was it Nottingham Forest, wasn't it, to Leipzig?
Yeah.
And a £30 million deal. And then
West Brom,
and then Depot Vale La Coruña. I mean, it's far-reaching clubs. I mean, he's been fighting relegation over there, and I think they did stay up, La Coruña, but
I didn't even know he was in Spain, if I'm honest.
It was only due to my purchase of Premier Sports that you get La Liga TV with that, so I was able to keep an eye on it.
Hopefully he's caught a first touch instead of COVID if he's been in Spain for the last 6 months. So.
Well, we hope. Or he might have met Boli over there for all we know, and maybe he said Celtic,
Aye, swap places. I actually forgot to write the guy's name down, but I seen it popping up last night. We were actually linked with the Roma goalkeeper. That kind of came out of nowhere. Apparently he's a Swedish international. I'm not even going to attempt his name, but I'll need to look it up. But I should have been prepared for that one. It was just while I was going through the names there that came into my mind. That would tell me if that's the case, because it was an Italian journalist with the blue tick that wrote it, obviously in Italian, and I read the translation. It said, but it said something Celtic wouldn't put a bid in, but a low bid, and I'm like, well, that's got Peter Lawwell lower it, so that's got to be true. But that would tell me that Lennon just doesn't fancy Scott Bain, or he doesn't fancy any of the guys below him either, if that's the case.
Well, I must admit, I've not heard of that rumour at all. As you say, it only came out last night, but I've not seen it anywhere on Twitter at all.
It's on my timeline, honestly, it's true.
That's fine, I'll have a look, I promise you.
I'll make it up.
But it's whether that keeper, whatever his name is, the Swedish international, would he like to be a backup goalkeeper, and would I can't see Lennon, as you say, changing between Barkas and this other potential person if ever was to ever come in.
Yeah. Right. Well, I would say all the positions we need. I'd say we definitely need probably a player to take on James Forrest, if not surpass him. We definitely need another centre back, and obviously we've got the striker in, so we're pretty close to what we hope is a good side moving forward. So I think we'll move on to. I think there's some in the I've got Twitter questions from some folk, and I think there's some questions regarding signings in there. So I'll move into them if that's all right.
Not a problem. Yeah, not a problem.
So I've got a question here from Celtic Boy. I think it's at Celtic Boy 73. So he's wrote, question for the pod. As El Hamid has predominantly played as a centre-back in his career to date, would it make more sense to sign a right-back to challenge Frimpong and add El Hamid to the centre-backs permanently? We need two after Jozo left, so this would mean securing just one new one to be sort of propelled into covering that area. So I think eventually we're going to move to a three at the back. And I think El Hamid, potentially a new guy, Ayer and Julien, and obviously Beaton will float between midfield and centre back. I think we'll have 5 for 3 effectively. So I don't think it will be a back two moving forward. I think now that we've got the Ajeti in, I think we're going to move back to a 3-5-2.
I mean, there's no way that we'll spend that money and not going to play and play 4-2-3-1. It's definitely there's going to be. I think Frimpong will certainly move up, and possibly Taylor as well. Because I think they're better at that. Because Taylor and Frimpong, if they were to play at the back, nothing against them, but they're quite small in height, and they're not big to be dealing with there. And I think El Hamid is just that bit better. If they were to, just to cover that kind of area, he's a bit more stronger, a bit more taller,
I like El Hamid. I think he's a classy player. I just wish he would stay. You can tell why we got him for under £2 million. It's just purely because he's injuries, I would imagine. If he's a guy that plays 50 games a season, he's a £10 million player for me.
He played a great game against Rangers the first time when we scored with Edward and Hayes. Yeah. He was absolutely fantastic, and I think he played superbly in Lazio until he got I think he got injured there, didn't he? And Beaton had to come off, had to come on for him. I would really like to see more of El Hamid this season, and if it means that he goes into centre back position or centre half, I would think, well, yeah, that would be something I'd like to see. And if you could imagine maybe Duffy, El Hamid, and maybe Julian, that wouldn't be the worst back three in the world.
Yeah. So next question is from Tony Cassidy. He's wrote, "Hi Stephen, can you discuss a little as we to why we keep scrambling around year on year in to try and qualify for Champions League? Surely a club of our size should be nailing it at least a year in advance." I think what he means is basically, why we're always scrambling about for players and try to fill positions with Champions League. And I don't think we can blame the club this season just because of what's going on, and other leagues are finishing at different times. We've just started the Champions Leagues effectively, kicking off late August as opposed to late June, early July. This year I'm going to give them a pass, but in previous years I think Celtic, in particular Peter Lawwell, has been guilty of pussyfooting about and try to squeeze every penny out of any deal, and I think it costs them.
Yeah, I mean it's always been the same. It is always gamble until we get to the playoff or the last qualifying round of whatever it is, and then you sign someone on the Friday as it used to be, and you never heard of them, And it was, instead of it just being just that, if they had that they put that outlay out there for a player, and then thought, well, we'll get it back anyway with the potential 30 million that they can make from Champions League group money, then I don't see what's wrong with doing that. I mean, the manager must go, in previous years, the manager must go to Peter Law and say, this is who I want. He doesn't. There's no way he's waiting till August and saying, oh, I think we'll go for him.
Every time we make a signing, we're looking as if we're bringing somebody in, it never happens, in a flash. It never feels like we've put a bid in, players accepted the terms, and he's displayed within 1 or 2 days. It always seems to drag out forever. The Ajeti one's been going on for 3 weeks. That might not have necessarily been our fault. It could have been down to the player looking to sort of weigh up his options. But
well, he was on holiday, so fair play. That did maybe take a bit longer, but I think there's been signings down the. I mean, Barkas took a while as well. I think, if truth be told, we were linked to him for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then he's coming, he's no cut, or he's here, and then we take a long time to announce it. I mean, today Raman Barbaz announced it before Celtic did.
I've got a similar question in for Martin Wilmot. He's basically asking the exact same. Why does it appear, he says in brackets to me anyway, that Celtic are so unprepared for this historical season? Even Rangers seem better prepared. We've let players go, Gordon, Hayes, Jozo, even Bile, before we had replacements in the door. Leaves us weaker, poor planning, lack of strategy. Puts 10 at risk, shouldn't be. Cheers, Martin. So, Martin's been very pessimistic, but I get, because we've seen it year in, year out, and it's, you kind of, and obviously, I think over the 9 in a row run that we've had, we've only qualified for the Champions League 4 times. So, the proof is in the pudding, and we generally don't ever seem prepared. I think in Brendan Rodgers' first season, we had O'Connell at centre back,
and Seri Yanko played against Hapoel Beersheva.
Nice.
Oh my God, that was a terrible. That own goal with him and Gordon, I'll never forget that. How bad that was.
Yeah. So another one for a Twitter question from Chris Harris. He's wrote, "Hi Stephen, I've got a question for you. What's the thoughts on Celtic's transfer strategy? Do you think it's shifting more to established players? We've brought in international goalkeeper Barkas, 26, and Ajeti, 23. Who's also an international. So obviously he's speaking about Duffy as well. I believe previously we looked at young potential to develop, and also Freeze, around about 33, 34-year-old. Cheers, Chris." So I mentioned on Twitter the day that I thought this is the first time since we signed Jarosik, Gravesen and Venegura Hesselink. This is the first time we've signed, not potential, we've signed established players to go straight into the first team for pretty big money. I can't think of any beyond that season where we made the type of signing.
there's been absolutely none. And because I saw that comment and I had a wee kind of quick troll through the brain of my archive there, and I was thinking there's never been a signing that you went, oh, I've heard of him and what a player, certainly in the first season. But back to just what you were saying about like signing established players, and back to the previous question is, when we were in this 9-in-a-row run, there's been a couple of seasons when, let's be honest, under Dyla, we'd done what we had to do. He was never given the backing.
Yeah.
I mean, there was never real money spent on him.
It's difficult to justify spending big money when Hibs, Rangers, and Hearts are not in the league. And
from a business point of view, I could totally see it. But then I think the fans certainly did voice their, not voice their displeasure, but they certainly showed that. I mean, closing the Lisbon Lions upper tier was certainly part of that. I think that people were just, it is what it is.
Yeah, well, that's the argument back. Is he not only reduced the budget and the player the wage structure, he also reduced the amount of season tickets and the amount of people sitting on a seat on a Saturday afternoon. So, there's something to be said of making sure that you're keeping your squad at a high level. And I think Dyla, eventually he had a good squad. He just didn't know how to, get the best out of them, and I think that proved a year later after he left, when we managed to go a full season unbeaten and won everything. So
it's the same squad apart from Dembele and Sinclair, I think.
Yeah. So I've got a question here from Celtic Ra 9 in a row. He's got a wee star in between it. It's quite hard to read it. So he's wrote, it's no long-winded at all, straight to the point. I knew number 10 going for the 10 despite Boli putting the 10 at risk. I think
that's a very good riddle he's put there. I'll give it.
I think Christie's been poor since the start of the season. I thought he was pretty poor through the through the pre-season. I think Tom Rogic, if he's not going to get a chance, if they're going to sell him, then I definitely think a number 10, because I don't think Ncham's best position is number 10. I think it's been part of one of the two centre midfields, so I wouldn't be against a new number 10, but that's only if Rogic is going to move on.
I'm a fan of Rogic, but he just never seems to have the stamina, and there's an old guy beside me, Joe, who hopefully will listen to this. He has, for years, always called Rogic Jogic, because he never runs far anywhere, and he's always knackered after 60 minutes. It's very, very rare that Rogic finishes a game, and I think that's one of the things that always annoys me with him. He never just keeps the stamina up. So, but with regards to Christie, sorry, but
fire in.
With regards to Christie, playing him out the right hand side is never going to work, and playing Forrest out on the left is never going to work. And time and time again he tries this, Lennon, and I don't see why. Put Christie in the middle. I
asked that question after the game. When was the last time switching wingers actually worked?
It never works. Forrest always has been better, because that's on his favoured side. Christie is better in the middle, and Elanusi, if he, obviously didn't have a great game on Sunday, but obviously can get better. That's where they're best positioned, and got to agree with Sham is much better as the two central midfielders, because he was the one that could hold it while McGregor maybe goes forward, and he'd be the one I'd prefer, to more have there than Brown.
So, last question from R. Stevenson on Twitter. He's wrote, a good backup for Forrest needed. So he's gave me three options: McLean, I'm assuming he means James McLean, or Roberts, Patrick Roberts, and what about Barry Douglas for a left back? I think James McLean is that's a trolling signing, that.
That would just, I think that's along the lines of Scott Allen signing. It's just to annoy some people.
That's Scott Allen times 100, I think.
Patrick Roberts, I would definitely have him back. I think you could certainly say that when he was there during the Invincible season, Forrest was certainly upped his game quite a bit, and was good. I think Roberts would be certainly good. I think you're missing that person who can take on the players, and he will try always something a bit different. He's always got a bag of tricks, Roberts, and he will try something different. If it doesn't work one way, he will.
I've always wondered if Roberts would be a good number 10.
You mean sort of in the middle, or just?
Aye.
Yeah.
I think the problem I don't think Patrick Roberts is a Neil Lennon type player. I think if he going to persist with Frimpong at right back. I can't see him going with Frimpong and Paddy Roberts on the right. I think too small, too fast guys. I think he likes a big side. I think he likes a bit of bulk, and that's why, you know, Ajeti and El Yunusi are quite bulky, kind of fast guys. And I just don't see Roberts as being as a Neil Lennon player. As for Barry Douglas, I can't tell you the last time I seen or watched Barry Douglas, so I couldn't comment.
Where is Barry Douglas? Is he still in Poland with like Poznan?
I don't know. I think he played for Scotland not that long ago, but he's just not a player that I've ever really paid much attention to be honest. So thanks for the suggestions, but I think for me it's a no on all three of them. So
well, I don't think any of the three is going to happen, because Roberts is the new Stephen Fletcher. He keeps getting linked every bloody window. You know what I mean? It's just not going to happen. You know.
Yeah.
And
he's a guy that needs to find a home as well. He needs to find somewhere full time,
because he has got talent, and it's a shame to see that talent go to waste. It really is. Barry Douglas, no. I'm afraid, sorry, no.
Nah, I'm the same.
We'll stick with Taylor.
So we'll move on to the final piece, because we're already over an hour, so we'll crack on. So Chris Commons had a bit of a rant in the paper the other day, saying that Ayer and Julian wouldn't make the top 20 of Celtic centre-backs. Top 10 out of the last 20 years of Celtic centre-backs. So I compiled a list and stuck it out on Twitter of all Celtic centre-backs that played from the year 2000 up to the present day. So do you want to crack on? Out of that list that I'd posted, have you got a top 10 you want to run me through?
Yeah, I've got a top 10 here, but this is in no particular order, so I do apologise.
Before Andy starts shouting at you.
And I'm bad for this, guys, so if anybody wants to really go down my throat, you know where I am, and say, oh well, I forgot him. So certainly my first two are Mjällby and Valharen. I pretty much grew up with the Martin O'Neill team of the 2000, 2003. Yep. They two were fantastic. Stan Varga, number 3. Yep. Always thought he was good for a goal. You know, every time a corner came in from Thompson, especially in the 03-04 season, I think Varga got quite a few goals from that.
He also had a bullet header against AC Milan away from home.
It was like a rocket, man. The neck power they must have put into that was incredible. So for him, he's in there, and I think he was a cheap buy, if truth be told. Kelvin Wilson, number 4.
Okay.
Thought he was great. It's just a shame we never really got to keep him for a bit longer, because I thought he had a really good game and had a really good European campaign with us in the 12-13 season.
Yes.
I thought it was one of the better players, one of the best players on the night against Barcelona. Maybe not against Spartak Moscow when he kind of caused one of the goals. Number 5 is Van Dijk.
Okay.
For obvious reasons, but as we've discussed earlier and discussed in previous times, is he never really got out of second gear. You know, he really done what he had to do.
The only thing that spoils his time was the European. I think we never got into the Champions League with him. And then obviously he left after that terrible night at Malmo. We go at the Champions League and next day he's down at Southampton. So it kind of left a bad taste.
We did get him into the Champions League on his first season when it was Ajax, right. And Ajax, AC Milan.
Do you know I'm talking shit? He didn't play against Malmo. It was the Maribor.
Maribor, aye. That's what it was, aye. Maribor. Oof, that was some game. I remember that. Tavares scored for them that night. The luckiest goal you've ever seen. Just looked over Craig Gordon. Anyway, number 6 was Denier. Always would have really liked to have seen Denier and Van Dijk strike up a partnership over a couple of years. I would have really liked that. Denier, I thought, was a really good player. But again, we could be here all night, but it's the loan signings. It's just a shame we never really got to keep him. Number 7 might cause a bit of debate with some people, is Boyata.
Okay.
Thought he didn't really have the greatest of starts, but once he kind of came onto a game under Rodgers and then subsequently under Lennon, I thought there was a really good defender there.
I think what people need to realise with centre-halves is Celtic will not. I think centre-halves, the most expensive centre-halves are the guys who make the least mistakes. So, guys like Van Dijk will maybe make one mistake every 20 games, if even that. You know, somebody like Boyata will make one mistake every 8, and that's the difference. You know, and I think that's the same with Julian as well. I think, you know, we'll always be able to get really good centre halves, but they will have the days where, you know, you go, fucking hell, man, he's shite.
But I mean, there was
I get
times
what you mean.
there was times though in that, I think the first season with Boyata, you were thinking, oh, who have we got here? You know, but then he did come onto a game, and I think, you know, Brendan Rodgers did kind of bring him in. You know, as much as I don't really like to speak too highly of Mr. Rodgers at times, he certainly did help with Boyata a little bit. Moving on to number 8, can't miss out Bobo Baldy. You know, I mean, what a tower he was. Remember his first game?
Colossal, I think it's the word.
Oh, colossal! That's he's like our Adama Traore. He's just a tank. He really is.
But he falls into that category with the likes of Boyata and Julian, that every now and again, and I think it's probably less so with Baldy, every now and again he'd have one of the moments that maybe cost you a game. You know, most famously was the Leon game, where 2 each were going through to the last 16, and he obviously it's a pretty dubious penalty, but it does hit his arm and it's a penalty, and we lose the game 3-2, and then we move into the UEFA Cup instead of the Champions League last 16. Obviously he gets sent off in the final against Porto. That was just, I think it was a stupid challenge when he didn't have to make, and he was already on a yellow, and that was, and at that point of the game Celtic looked the stronger of the two. So
Celtic was on top of that extra time period. They were on top, and I think it was Derley took down, if my memory is right. And Derley, I mean, we've got to be honest, he makes the absolute biggest meal out of it.
Yeah, but I don't think he had to make a meal out of it, because for me it was a yellow regardless. That was the point. You know,
I know, but you think maybe if he didn't make as much of a, you know, you could be here all night with that game.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, Baldy, I mean, he could certainly put a tackle in. I mean, I think there was one, I think it was the 03-04 season, the whitewash, and Michael Moles was through and goal for Rangers, and what a tackle. I'm surprised he never broke Moles' legs. It was the ferocity and the speed of this tackle, you know, and that's what I really liked about Baldy. He was not afraid, and he would take the players out of the game, but almost in a clean way would take them out of the game. You know, I really liked that about him.
Yeah.
But just
I was going to say, what would you call it? Oh God, it's gone. I was going to make a point there. That's what it was. Bobo Baldy. There was a game against Man United, the one that we won 1-0. There was a point where I think it was Cristiano Ronaldo was running clean through, and Bobo Baldy comes in from behind and just, you know, absolutely comes in, leg round the side, wins the tackle, and obviously Ronaldo's going off his nut. But
they're the ones that could be given so easily, you know, and you know you ride your luck with those games, you know.
Yeah.
But at the end, I think, you know, I mean, he maybe was on just a bit too much money, and it was maybe hard to shift him.
He was what was it he said? Peter Lawwell's got to look after Celtic PLC. I've got to look after Bobo Baldy PLC. That's
when I took that to realise what he was actually meaning, I thought it was when he first came, and I'm like, all right, okay, now I get it. With Birmingham City. Anyway, moving on to number 9, Benkovic.
Okay.
Really liked Benkovic.
He's a big classy defender with a bit of dig about him, isn't he?
Bit of silk about him, you know, as you say, a bit of class. Never really put a foot wrong. Would have liked him to come back. There's a couple there, you know, Denier, but you know, you would have loved to have seen them just blossom, because they were getting the game time at Celtic, and Benkovic, you know, was okay for a goal. Scored one against Hearts, and he had a good way of kind of getting the ball off the player. He would never let a player out of his sights. He was going straight in for the ball, right on top of him, not giving them too much space, and it's what you can ask. All you can ask for in a defender, really. You know, just put it in there. So
who's your final one?
Final one, well, it's the one that's already caused my first argument, if you want to call it that, is Christopher Ajer. So out of them all, I mean, there was some absolute tosh in there. I mean, Tyler Black, if he makes anybody's list, they need to have a word with themselves. You know what I mean?
There was a couple of people that I could have put in that played maybe like 10 games or something, but they were so shite that they weren't even worth putting on the list.
And the best one for me was Stephen Moyle-Colo.
There was the guy I was talking about is Josh Thompson. I think he had 18 appearances with Celtic, and I don't remember any of them, to be honest. So.
I remember he did score 2 goals against Motherwell when I think it was just after the semi-final. and Motherwell went 1-0 up, and he scored the 2 goals. In Lennon's kind of first period as manager when he took over from Mowbray.
I honestly can't remember.
Oh, it was a terrible game. The ground was half empty, but I've got a weird memory of games. You'll soon get to know I'm called the Stato. And
that's fine.
If there's any games we're struggling to remember, I'll try and remember here.
Right. So that's your 10 then? Yeah.
That's my 10 there.
Well, I had most, so I'll quickly run through mine. My Albi, I had Big Bobo Baldy. I had Yusuf Harn. I think Yusuf Harn was one of the most underrated centre-backs we've ever had. I thought he was tremendous. For 4-5 years, he was really, really good on that kind of right. I think he played on the left of the three, even though he was right-footed. But I thought, he was just an unsung hero, I think, and he played a lot of big games and won a lot of big matches with Celtic. Virgil van Dijk, obviously we've discussed him. I had Stephen McManus in there for the sheer fact that I don't think he was like silky or, I think he was just a big, solid, rugged defender. And the fact that he got to the last 16 twice, 2 years running, and obviously won the league, won the cups against a pretty good Rangers side, I think it'd be tough not to have him in that list for
Very
me.
Good point, actually, yeah, because I looked at him and I thought,
and he'd come up with goals and big goals as well.
He did score a couple of good goals, actually.
I think the Hearts game where we went top of the league at New Year, where he scored twice, and obviously the game against Milan, he scored to make it 1-0. So obviously we won that game 2-1. So that's I thought McManus deserved to be in there. Like you, I had big Stan Varga as well. I thought again, for somebody it costs us nothing. I thought he done a really good job. Although he ruined my holiday in Florida when he headed the ball straight to Mackay for Bayern Munich, who just stuck it in. I had Charlie Mulgrew. I just think Charlie was I know he was quite versatile, but I think he was a good servant to the club in a difficult period. And I think he'd done really well for Celtic. So I thought I'd throw him in there. I went for players with a bit more longevity than the likes of Benkovic.
Mulgrew was certainly good. I think, with the whole walking off against Ajax maybe sticks a little bit in people's minds, maybe. And
possibly.
That might, but he was more he's more of a left back to me than he ever was a centre half. But he was versatile and he had a good shot on him. He had a couple of cracking goals against Dunfermline and a good free kick against Motherwell in the cup final.
Yes, absolutely. So, like you, I had Jason Denayer. I think that season he was with us, I thought he was absolutely outstanding, especially in Europe as well. I think he played better in Europe than Van Dijk, if I'm honest.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was a lot of people had that same opinion. It's a shame we didn't have him.
I've went for Christopher Jullien as my number 9. And the reason for Jullien, I think his performances in Europe last season was tremendous, especially against Lazio. And the games against Rangers, obviously the 2 that we won, I thought he was absolutely colossal at Ibrox and in the cup final. I think I see past. He's had 3 for me pretty shocking games, but other than that, I think he's been a pretty good buy, to be honest, considering the market that we're shopping in for. When you compare him at 7 million versus Aberdeen wanting 7 or 8 million for their guy, Scott McKenna, you've got to ask yourself, I think we get the better deal there.
Well, I think there's no way we would ever spend 8 million on an Aberdeen player.
I don't think so
that would be peak 2020 if we spent 8 million on McKenna.
Yeah. And to finish it off, like you, I had big Dedrick Boyata. I think he had more good than bad. I thought in the Invincible season, I thought he was absolutely outstanding when he came in. And if you watch the cup final back again, I think in that game he's picking passes into the midfield and stuff. I thought at times he looked a top defender. He just had that 1 or 2 games where he'd lost it, Aye. So that's my top 10. So
you've put me, you've doubted me on it.
So between the two of us, we've managed to get Ayer and Jullien into the top 10. So Chris Commons is talking shite. So just as we were finishing, we had a wee problem with connection with Skype, and I think I'm going to ditch Skype, to be honest. I had problems with it last week with Rachel, but I think Rachel was using a walkie-talkie instead of a laptop, to be honest. So sorry, Rachel. So I just want to say thanks to Kevin for joining me tonight. I just want to thank anybody who's tuned in. So remember, you can follow us on Twitter at the Celtic Ray, and you can subscribe to the podcast via all platforms, whether it's Spotify, Android, Apple, Facebook, and also on YouTube as well. I've stuck it on, so thanks for that. Also, I want to just thank Charlie and the boys. They've given me permission to use their song Willie Maley as part of my intro and outro for the podcast. So again, thanks to these guys, and hopefully they're back gigging soon once all this lockdown shite has finished. So just want to say thanks again. If you ever want to get in touch, just drop me a wee DM or a wee tweet, and if you want to follow Kevin, give him a wee shout. So thanks again. Catch you next week. Cheers.
And they gave us James McRory and Paul McStay. They gave us Johnston, Tully, Murdoch, Gold and Hay. And most of the football greats have passed through Parkhead's gates, but to play football the Glasgow Celtic way. And they played football the Glasgow